Hi, my name is Chris Brown. I am the CEO for ClosePoint USA. In today's episode of ClosePoint Cafe, I have an extraordinary individual that I've always been in awe of. She has personifying professionalism, consistency, kindness, and her results are just amazing in what she's been able to accomplish in the real estate industry. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you today Jackie Baumeyer. Good morning, Jackie.
You're
How are you?
too kind. Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Well, I don't think it's too kind. I think it's appropriate. I mean, I've always felt very highly about you and your husband and how you guys come off in the way where, honestly, I learn from, and I try to want you to be around me more because it's such a great relationship that I've seen and how you've grown. And, and Deanna and I, when we're together, I want to be much like what you guys have done. And I'm not kidding when I say that.
Well, the feeling's mutual.
Thanks.
We love spending time with you guys.
So not to make you blush or anything, our purpose here today, I guess, is just to introduce who you are and how you became who you are today. What built you, and if you could, let's start with your childhood. What was that like? What is the driving force behind, your thought process and what made you get to where you are now?
Okay. Yeah. So my childhood, I think I would summarize with one word as adaptable. I grew up as a military family child, along with 3 sisters.
Okay.
My dad was in the military, and I was actually born in Spain.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, I was born in Torrejon Air Force Base in Spain many, many years ago. My parents actually at that time were both in the military. Okay. My dad flew medevac for the Air Force, and my mom was actually the first female air traffic controller in the Air Force. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I
grew up. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Given the way you are, and what you're telling me about your mom, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I love it.
So military childhood. Yeah. We moved all over the place. Mm-hmm. My dad was in a position once he started to achieve, he retired as a Chief Master Sergeant as well from the Air Force. So once he started to achieve rank, he was in a position that was kind of like one deep specialized position. So once we arrived to where I spent the majority of my teenage years, which was Colorado, I did spend many of my later years there. But up until then, as a family, we traveled all over the place.
Oh, wow.
So
what was the most memorable place that you can remember being and you were just like, I love it here?
Colorado, for sure. And that was where, like I said, our family landed and where I would consider home. When people ask me where I'm from, I say I am from Colorado, but really kind of everywhere.
Right.
But Colorado Springs. We lived in Colorado Springs, and ironically, later in my career in the military, John and I ended up being stationed back in Colorado Springs, which was ironic.
Okay.
But the Air Force Academy. My father was stationed at the Air Force Academy. So
special place.
It's a special.
All of them are.
It's like its own little world, its own little, city within a city, and just views and things to do, and just a great place to be. So that was probably my most memorable place.
Okay.
That we lived.
And you went to high school in Colorado Springs?
I did. Aurora, Colorado was where my later teenage years ended up graduating from high school.
Okay.
And kind of started my path to now from there.
After high school, you get into the military at that point, or?
No, actually, while I was in high school, I enlisted. My dad had to approve of that because of my age. I was 17 at the time.
Wow.
So I knew probably, I think my sophomore year, I would say, maybe early junior year, that I wanted to go in the military. Okay. But before that, I will tell you, I always wanted to be in law enforcement.
Wow.
So I was a police explorer with the Aurora Police Department, which is where I went to high school at.
Okay.
Through my whole high school career. So I did that all 4 years. I knew I wanted to be in law enforcement in some manner. And then just seeing that it was a pretty logical path, seeing as I had grown up in a military family, I really wanted to be on my own. I wanted to move and get my life started on my own as an adult. I was ready. the military seemed like a great option for that. And I got in guaranteed law enforcement into the military.
That was your path?
Yes. I was not joining the military unless I could do law enforcement, which took some finagling.
Why law enforcement? What was like? What do you like about it? What drove you to that career?
That's a difficult question to answer. I have always been, with my dad being in the military, I don't want to sound like self-righteous, but I've always been like a proponent, like a promoter of doing the right thing and helping people.
Don't hold back on that. That's a
whatever
good thing.
way that I can. And I'm good at rule following. I'm good at, leading others to do the right thing and helping people, maybe in trouble or that need guidance and things like that. So it's always been a strength of mine.
Gotcha.
Even in, high school, I like to help people. I don't know. So law enforcement
was your path
seemed like a good fit. And I really, if I'm being honest, I didn't have a super huge interest in anything else. I don't know. I was not a great student.
Really?
No, you would not want to know my GPA. I was not interested in school. I did not want to go to college at that time.
Gotcha.
At all. No interest in college. In fact, I struggled to even want to finish high school. I was full-time employed at a Dairy Queen. I was a manager. I was working. I was being a police explorer, and I was like going to high school part-time when I would show up. I hated school. Yeah, I really did.
School's not for everybody.
No, it's not.
And I find it amazing, and not to digress here, but everybody's in today's age has got to go to college. You got to do this.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You could be successful if you love what you're doing.
You can. There's many different paths.
And you're good at it. And that's what I've learned, about whether you go to college or not. Find something you love and become good at. Yep. College, to me, is what you're supposed to be training to do what you love and be good at it.
And I had no interest then.
Right.
As that young, I just had no interest. I mean, I have multiple degrees now that I earned coming up in my adulthood. And I further, I enjoyed college later. But as a kid at 17, going 4 years, no, that was not in my interest zone at all.
So you graduate high school, you get right into the military.
Yep.
What's basic training like?
I graduated from high school, and then I left for basic training that next January after I graduated. Sure. Basic training was basic training. It was unique. It was interesting. Something obviously I never experienced before. You only know a little bit of what to expect.
Right.
But again, something about me in others, even then, they saw a leader. So I ended up being, it's called the dorm chief in basic training for our flight of female students, which was 80 girls. So I was the dorm chief. So I was the one responsible for making sure that everybody was awake and on time and cleaned up and, foot lockers and wall lockers clean and all the strings cut off their uniforms and, their boots are shined. And when they weren't, I was the one ultimately held accountable and pulled in by the drill sergeant and given the what for.
Where is basic training for Air Force?
San Antonio, Texas.
It's in Texas.
Yep, and in January,
17 years old, you get shipped up into Texas.
Well, I think I had turned 18 by then.
Okay.
Yeah, I had turned 18. I had just turned 18. So left one early morning, arrived in San Antonio off a bus with very little sleep because they kind of leave you on that bus for a while, at least then. Now it's a little gentler, I think, but you show up and they bring you under this building because that's the way the basic training dorms are built. They're kind of up on stilts. And the underneath is where the drill is done. When it's foul weather, that's where you fall out in the mornings for reveille and all that stuff. They line you up and scream at you for hours on end. And then you get a little sleep.
Were you prepared for that? The screaming.
My dad had kind of prepped me for a little bit of it.
I would think.
But it had been, couple decades since he had even been through basic training
Right.
at that point. So yes and no, but it really, I don't know, I kind of didn't stress me out because I knew it was
You knew it was
part of the trade, part of the game, if you will.
So you get through basic. Where did they assign you for? Where did you jump into? Where were you commissioned, or your orders, or where did they install you?
So in the Air Force, when you graduate from basic training,
Mm-hmm.
or when you're getting ready to graduate from basic training, and I know you're going to pass, you had previously agreed to a career field. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so previously I came into the Air Force as guaranteed law enforcement. So I knew after basic training I was going to my technical school, which is what it's called for enlisted personnel.
Okay.
So as an airman, graduated from basic training, I knew I was going to tech school short for technical.
Gotcha.
I stayed right in Texas. So there's a couple parts of technical school. I'm trying to reflect on it all because it's like a whirlwind experience that, you know, when you're in the moment, it's so there, but trying to reflect back on it, man, it's such a long time ago. There was part of the training was focused on law enforcement
Mm-hmm.
duties, and the other part of technical school for law enforcement troops in the Air Force at that time was security purposes. Because as a law enforcement person in the Air Force, you perform two sides of the trade, if you would.
Okay.
So law enforcement in securing the base,
Right.
doing law enforcement duties like any other beat cop, if you would, in the civilian world would do, riding in a patrol car, issuing tickets, you know, looking for speeders, responding to domestic violence incidents, responding to robberies, shopliftings, things like that. And then on the other side, you're training on security,
Right.
because the base itself must be secure.
It's like a city.
Correct. There's planes and assets
That's right.
and priority resources on the base that require security. And then there are, in fact, some bases in the Air Force that really just focus more on the security aspect of our job versus law enforcement.
Gotcha.
So they're preparing you at that point. They're preparing me to be able to, throughout my career, perform any of those duties.
Right.
So I believe that it was 3 months, 3 or 4 months total for the school. Not what you would think, not as long as you would think.
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah.
That's interesting, actually.
It's not that long.
But I'm sure intense.
It's kind of the basics of everything, if you
Gotcha.
will. Because once you then arrive to your first base, they give you what's called on-the-job training,
Okay.
specific to that installation,
Gotcha.
to prepare you to do that general job at that installation.
And how long were you in the military?
I was in the military for 21 years.
What is the most memorable situation as military police,
Okay.
and what you had to deal with, if you can speak about it? You know, maybe there's some highly classified situation that you
man.
can't talk to.
There were many.
That you were like, wow, this is why I did what I did. You know.
There were many. At one point in my career, I worked closely with it's called the base sexual assault response coordinator.
Okay.
So I was a enlisted, I guess, point of contact to be there for victims of sexual assault. So in that role, if there was a victim of sexual assault, whether I was on duty or off duty, I may be called in to go and help the sexual assault response coordinator respond to that particular call, be it either at the person's residence, or let's say they showed up at a hospital to
A rape kit.
in the interest of moving forward with a rape kit or something like that, or just making a report because that there's kind of a stigma there was at that time in the military of reporting things. So it was kind of like this next level point of contact, and to through your personality and being a woman, being able to talk to this victim and encourage them and help lead them down the right path to get the care they need, and also help us as law enforcement be able to
Catch the perpetrator.
get the investigation to fruition, to be able to catch the person who not necessarily catch, because most sexual assaults are from known people, but to be able to get the evidence needed to hold that person accountable.
And you're right. And back then, I would think that it was a different, like, feeling of how rape and sexual assault was looked at as opposed to what it is today. So you're a driving.
It's much more talked about now.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
It is.
And I guess because of your position and what you've done, you're a component to making sure that it became something that wasn't in the shadows anymore, and it was in the light of day.
Exactly. It was a role that it's a volunteer spot that you can volunteer to, be put in. And it wasn't my sole job, but it was kind of like a side thing that you could volunteer to do to, offer benefit to that program, which was the Sexual Assault Response Coordinator program, which was very new at that time. So
how about that?
And it's developed over the years, but that was a role that I particularly liked, along with a ton of others. John and I deployed to Afghanistan on the same team one time.
I was going to ask you about deployment.
Yeah.
Afghanistan, anywhere else?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I have 6 overseas deployment tours. John, I think, has 5 or 6 as well. Couple of those deployments we went at the same time. So our kids had to be cared for by our parents at that time because we were both gone.
Sure.
But so super sucky on that side.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's a whole thing that you look back on as now that I'm retired from the military and still married to my husband, whom I love. And you're like, wow, that was an experience together,
So were you guys deployed together?
Yeah, on the same team.
No kidding.
Yeah, same team, one at a time, same team, same base. It was a leadership team in Afghanistan at Bagram Air Base.
Wow.
And then separate occasion, I was doing, as law enforcement people, we do different things when we're downrange or deployed. I was doing customs duties, and he was doing personal security duty for a general. He was flying on helicopters, guarding a general all throughout Kuwait. So, but we were both in Kuwait at bases 30 minutes from one another.
That's pretty cool.
Doing different cool things. Yeah.
So you were able to keep in contact with each other.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
We both had cell phones there in the country.
Sure.
So, like, he would text me, I see you down there. I'm flying over in a helicopter.
No kidding.
Yeah, he actually shut down my swimming pool that I like going to because it wasn't safe enough, and his general wanted to, he was in charge of doing route security for certain places, and he was like, yeah, that doesn't look secure enough. Shut it down. So I couldn't go to the swimming pool anymore. I was pretty mad.
And you had someone's ear to let them know.
He did. He had the direct line to the general who was in charge of making sure that I
couldn't
have any fun anymore.
My wife is not happy with this decision.
I couldn't lay out. They did pedicures. They did all these fun things that women love to do, especially in crappy places like that. I was pretty mad. So, but yeah, just looking back,
that's
crazy.
that's amazing. I didn't know it was that long. It's a very long time.
Yeah.
And you ended up being what rank when you completed your time?
So I joined as an E1 because that's what happened. Well, as an airman basic, when you don't come in with any college experience, you join as the lowest of the low.
That's the beginning of the ladder right there.
Yep.
E1.
So I went from E1 to E8.
Okay.
So as a senior master sergeant, enlisted level 8, I guess you could call it E8. That's what it stands for.
Right.
So I retired as a senior master sergeant.
Wow.
Yeah. I was
common
up
for women to be of that level?
So the Air Force and the military in general is very male dominated.
Yeah.
So, and in law enforcement particularly is also very male dominated. So that, it prompted me and I guess motivated me to always be focused on, instead of worrying about what everybody else is doing around me and how can I model myself after that person, or I just worked on always knowing my trade to the best of my ability and worrying about how I could best employ it and lead in that regard, and not worrying about who might be doing it differently or better or faster.
Gotcha.
Because it is very male dominated. And at that time, a lot of guys didn't like female leaders.
How about
They didn't like me telling them what to do or making the rules, There's many circumstances I can think of
That's
where
their-
I was
that's their
confronted.
problem.
It was their problem.
That's
And
their
that I
problem.
had to make myself stand tall and know that, look, I'm here for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'm doing. I've been entrusted in this position.
Right.
And that's really all it's about. It's not about power or, no, make the man do what I want him to do. No, it's just skill.
Getting the mission done.
And most times, at first, those people who were, not crazy about the idea, after working with me for a little bit, they soften up to it because they realize I do know what I'm doing. And I'm not just here because you think that, like we had a saying in the Air Force law enforcement career field, you're either mean or you're slutty.
Okay.
So once they figured out I wasn't slutty, that I was mean.
I don't think you're mean. I think you.
Well, I'm a little different
but you
than
can,
I was.
in my experience, I wouldn't call it mean. I think you're guided by a principle of integrity, and sometimes when you have to. In my life, when you have to, in the rules of real estate, when I do a real estate closing, sometimes some people want you to do things that aren't
Absolutely
what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And you have to look at not just that deal, but globally, what does that do to your company? And I'd rather walk away from somebody who requires me to go away from the integrity aspect of the industry and let them go ahead, do your thing, than to bend the rules to allow something that shouldn't happen.
And integrity always prevails.
Always will always happen.
It always prevails. It might not feel comfortable. It might not make everybody happy right there in the moment, but it always prevails. And the key to employing integrity, in my opinion, is the ability to do it confidently, not seeming wishy-washy, and doing it in a way that makes people feel either intrinsically or extrinsically rewarded by it. 100%. This is going to be good for you because, or if you choose not to do this, it's going to be good or bad because. And usually, even people who might not be ethically driven can see through that. Can see through, what she is saying or what that professional person is saying is probably right, and I should make that decision.
Right. And I agree. I've had those situations a few times. You can only imagine, when it comes to your settlement statement and who wants to get paid something that doesn't belong. And
or how can we get around doing it the right way, or
what
can we say? How can we write this to where it works? But it's not above par.
In the good faith of what you're doing.
Right.
So
just call it what it is. Do it the right way, and it will prevail.
100%.
Best for everyone in the end. So, yeah.
So in all this 21 years of being in the military, you're a mom.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your kids.
I'm a busy mom.
You are a busy mom. I know that.
So John and I, we met actually in our assignment in California. It was my second assignment. It was like his second or third. John came. He had 2 boys at that time, and he had been through a divorce, and his kiddos were young, 5, 6, something like that. And then we met in California and immediately connected. We were both cops. We were both in the same unit. We were both doing the same job. Different facets within the job, but that was how we met. And we both loved going to the gym. So in those areas, we would always see each other and ended up connecting, and the rest is history. I challenged him to a long run, and he agreed. He was slower. It's okay.
That's awesome. Sorry, John.
I was really fit back then. I mean, I still like to consider myself fit, but I loved running, and that was his weakness. He was more of a muscle guy. So, yeah, I challenged him.
Well, muscle requires more oxygen, so you got to get twice as much cardio when you're like John, so fit. So
he had strong legs, but I still won. So
Nice.
took him on a run, and the rest is history. So we have two children. They were born a couple years apart. Both were born in California. And they're both in college now. I can't even believe I'm saying that. So one of them is a senior.
You were painting one room. I know you were away with, which one was it? The one that just graduated. I think you were painting her apartment.
Yeah.
With her for a week.
So Oliver, she is 23 now. We just helped her buy her own house.
Gotcha. That's what.
In Delaware.
Yes.
And we helped her flip it over the summer. We were there almost every day. It really sucked, but it was fun and sucky at the same time. Everything is that way in life, right?
Nothing worth doing isn't hard.
Yeah,
it's always hard.
Super easy, but it was fun. She learned a lot. We learned a lot. So now she's in a PhD program at University of Delaware in chemistry. She wants to be a professor ultimately. So she is about halfway through her first semester of her PhD program.
Not shocked.
And our Caden, he's in his senior year at Penn State. He's a finance major. Yeah, so he is loving every minute of his life up there, of course.
And what do you think he's going to end up?
I don't know yet. He really likes the idea of wealth management, but he's very young for a senior too. So I'm like trying to give him his space to decide what he wants to do and not pressuring him, although I think he should be doing some things faster. But he just turned 21 and he's going to be graduated.
Wow.
From college already.
That's early.
So, yeah, he was always young in his class, so it just
good for him.
Happened to be that way. And then we have two stepsons. One of them is a lineman, does amazing work out in California, climbing high tension power lines, getting dropped off by helicopters, doing crazy stuff.
Wow.
Doing wonderfully. We just went to his wedding.
Oh, nice.
In Ventura, California, and then
Nice place.
John's younger son, my stepson, is also just an amazing welder. Those guys are both just like
super
work
successful
with their hands. Yeah, like very talented, like welder, and he lives in Alaska. So.
Oh wow.
Yep. So we've got 4 kids in 4 different states right now.
Not easy to keep up with them.
Yeah, we're busy.
Your Christmases and Thanksgivings must be all over the place.
Yeah, we don't get to see the 2 older boys as often as we like because of their distance, of course.
Sure.
But we still, for now, have been able to achieve Ollie and Caden coming back here to spend holidays with us. Hopefully that can continue.
So I assume you landed in New Jersey because of the base.
Yeah, so I was in the Air Force for 21 years, as you know. So I ended up retiring from my last assignment, which was in Colorado, and Peterson Air Force Base, where I ended my career. I was not law enforcement my entire career. I ended my career at Peterson Air Force Base, where I was the Director of Education for Leadership Academy there.
Okay.
One of the 12 in the Air Force. They call it the Non-Commissioned Officer Academy. And it was the Peterson Air Force Base Non-Commissioned Officer Academy that I was the Director of Education for. So that's where the Air Force trains its non-commissioned officers to be prepared to move into the higher ranks of senior non-commissioned officers.
Gotcha.
So where I ended my career there, I retired right after that stint because I was up for Chief Master Sergeant, as was John. And we decided that because of his age versus my age, I was younger and I was more well-suited, if you will, to start a full second career.
Gotcha.
We decided that I would retire first and that he would continue his career as long as he wanted to in the Air Force and take the next rank, which we knew would move us.
And he was at the top of the ladder.
So he was in the E8 at that time when I retired, and then he got promoted to E9 shortly thereafter. So
and that's
Chief Master Sergeant.
Chief Master Sergeant.
Yep.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it's
super impressive.
It's still weird to say because we both met as little, young
E1s.
Well, we met when I was, I think, an E3 and he was an E4.
Wow.
So, but yeah, we grew up together in the Air Force, and then he got orders when he promoted to Chief Master Sergeant. Well, we were at Peterson. He was working for the Space Force at that point. Yeah, it was when Space Force was brand new. Or Space Command at that time, which then became Space Force. His orders as the chief of police, essentially, for the joint base here at McGuire.
Oh, wow.
Brought us here. So he came here to be the chief security forces there is what it's called.
And how long have you been in New Jersey now?
8 years.
8 years. And then you retire and you get a position with...
Yeah, I retired. And I was like, do I want to strap a gun on some more? Do I want to go do security work for some corporation somewhere, which is another avenue that a lot of private law enforcement people do. They do private security. They do all kinds of things within the security field. But I was like, I'm just not into that right now, I wanted to do something different. So I had grown in my career, become from a young lady to an older lady. And I was like, I love homes. I've always loved homes. I've always loved decorating homes. John and I, throughout our time in the military, had always been proponents of buying homes of our own along the way. When we would get moved and stationed somewhere else, we would always buy a house.
Gotcha.
And then sell it. And we would always come out on top. There was no guarantee that was going to happen. There was no guarantee.
Sure.
But we could not get behind the military, the government paying us a monthly allowance for housing and then just giving it back to them in the form of living on the base.
Gotcha.
Because that's what they do.
No equity.
No equity. You gain nothing from it. There's no chance that you'll make money.
Right.
So we were always proponents of buying homes.
Gotcha.
And moving. So I thought to myself, that might be a fun path, helping other military people do that, because we had seen tons of military people just give their money away every month.
So not only are you providing a service, but you're educating these guys.
Absolutely. Yep.
You're saying this is the better route for you.
There's a lot of fear in the military community because a lot of people feel that if they buy a house, they might not be able to sell it, or if they buy a house, they might lose money, or there's a lot of ifs that we can always run through our heads, of why shouldn't I do something? But then if you really think hard enough about it, and you've got someone who's been through it to help guide you with the positives in the situation, some of that fear subsides.
Gotcha.
In my opinion. So.
No, I think you're right. I think I never looked at it from a fear standpoint. Why somebody in the military would buy a home and worried about those things. That's really interesting to me, actually.
Because some people don't stay at their base for that long.
Right.
And sometimes the military issues you, if you will, some unpredictability in your life. So that's true. So there's a lot of unpredictability.
So you have somebody that you're educating about why. Is there any scenario where you would say, maybe owning a home isn't the best option for you? Okay. Can you go into...
Many times that has been the circumstance. So, and that's one of the things that I feel is a huge plus for someone in the military to work with someone who has been in the military as a realtor now, but used to be in the military. Because, for two reasons for that matter. For one reason, I'm not just in this to get a paycheck. I have a pension. Truthfully, John and I can live on that and still be fine, right? I am not driven to a must-sell, must-buy situation. I'm just not. Is it great to close deals and make money? Of course. But the last thing that John or I want to do is advise someone to buy a home if it's not in their best interest, and they will lose. Or their job is so unpredictable where they're not on a guaranteed tour, which is a term that, a non-military affiliated realtor might not know, but we know what that means.
Right.
If it's a tour that's not a set tour length,
right,
and you could get moved in the next year and a half, you're up for promotion this year to like one of the senior NCO ranks, like there is some very big unpredictability there.
Sure.
So being able to feel that out and talking to people and learning their situation, if they are a military client, absolutely, there have been times where we're like, let's let this play out for the next 6 months and see where that goes. And in the meantime, we're going to educate you on the process.
Right.
See if you get your certificate of eligibility so that you're prepared to buy if and when the time presents itself. And a lot of times it does. and we do end up, they end up buying. But there are some circumstances where it's like, ooh, glad we waited. This was not the right place.
This is not the right time. Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that gains us a lot with our niche of customers.
But I just think it's amazing that you're able to adapt what you've gone through in your life to now preach, and not preach, but educate these guys and say, this is how I did it. And it's always worked out for us, and give them that comfort level. Yeah, I would go with you. If I was in the military and I needed to listen to somebody and say, she did it for 21 years, and every time, like you said, you came out on top. So,
and most times you are going to come out on top.
Yes, in this market, yes.
In this current market,
yes.
Right, with the exception of a couple situations in times past. But there's very few circumstances where even if you're owning a house 2 years, this, you're probably going to come out on top. You're probably going to have some equity, even after you pay closing costs as a seller.
It's amazing to me what that market is doing. I've been doing this for 26 years, and I've never seen the rapid growth of equity that has taken place in the real estate market.
And as long as it stays that way, it's tough for us to say to a military family, sure, just go pay that to the government. Just take their money and give it all back to them.
But let me ask you this. And did you ever consider saying to somebody, even if you get deployed, I will manage your property for you and I will get you a tenant. I will, put that situation, or go to Airbnb. Has that ever came into your business plan for yourself?
So being familiar with a VA loan, I do advise people.
That's right.
That when they do get orders, they have a couple of options at that point, right? They can turn it into an investment property, refinance it.
Do you have to? Do you have to?
You don't have to, but you cannot use your VA loan benefit forward if you've still got that benefit tied up in your current house, right?
Gotcha.
So then they're homeless, essentially, at their next duty location. So to be able to free up that benefit amount,
you just go refinance.
They've got to refinance it into another program, and then they can take that benefit amount forward with them if they're renting their current property. And there have been a couple of circumstances that I've
Does the military or the VA loan program allow somebody who isn't an active military there to rent out their property?
Yeah, well, yes.
Okay.
But your benefit remains tied up.
Your benefit gets, okay.
Correct.
So if they were where they ended up being stationed for a longer period of time, got what you're saying. They would have to refinance out of that situation so they can use their benefit. How many of your clients, the military, actually utilize VA for their loan? So what percentage would you say?
I mean, our niche is not only military, but of those military clients,
right.
I would say it really depends on the situation, but definitely 80% or higher. There's a couple circumstances, like let's say that a military member wants to use VA, but they're not married yet to their partner or someone, they're engaged. They can't really yet use that benefit because the partner can't be on the loan with them if they're not married.
How about that?
Let me rephrase. They can be on the loan with them, but they have to bring up the difference in a down payment. So they would have to put a huge down payment versus what the VA loan is intended to be, which is the ability to a zero down payment.
Gotcha.
So maybe that circumstance, or in
this
the recent...
This is stuff, by the way, I never knew about.
Really?
I never knew about what you just said about the down payment being bifurcated as to, okay, you're not military, you're not married, therefore you have to come up with the 10%.
They do.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like they have to come up with a certain percent, and then they can be on the VA loan with the VA eligible person. And then the other thing is, as you know, with the recent competitive market, if we have a client who's, let's say, very well off, who's going to be putting a significant amount of money down, they might choose to use a conventional product, maybe to get a better rate, or to, unfortunately, dispel the myth of VA buyers are bad.
I was going to get into that part. Yeah, okay.
So they might, maybe if we see that could benefit them, they would choose to use that product over a VA product. But otherwise, like for someone who is active duty, buying a home, still in the midst of their career, wanting to buy a home, most times those military clients are using a VA loan.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Because it's their benefit. Why not? 0% down. They do pay a funding fee. But again, the equity has been so positive in recent years.
And it's a reduced interest rate, I would take it. I mean,
it's usually better interest rate.
Yeah, it's better interest rate. So when you present an offer in this competitive market and you have a VA, pro tips, of how you're getting that done.
I don't want to give all my secrets.
I know you won't get away with secrets. I get it. But just give me a little tip for our audience.
I'll give you a little tip.
Okay, go ahead.
There are a lot of things that a military person brings to the table that maybe a civilian person might not. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And for someone who represents VA clients that are active duty, I know those things. And I'm able to present them in a way that helps them stand out. And it doesn't just have to do with financial terms.
Right. Stability.
Simple as that.
That's a big one. That's a really good. Well, so now you're a realtor. What part of your military, other than identifying with current military clients, that's a big component of your business. But non-civilian. Civilian listing. I see you list houses. Yeah. Beautiful houses, I have to say.
It's been so fun.
Yeah, but you have...
Blossom.
Honestly, I think after listening to you, and it goes back to, you don't chase it money.
Not necessarily. The money is nice.
Yeah, but you're not...
And it comes and it's grown, you know.
The money is all part of it. But I will tell you from my perspective, when I first started in the bedroom of my first house, this company, I said to myself, I don't care about the money. Mm-hmm. I care about how well I do the job, and the money will follow. I heard you say that too. Like, this wasn't you chasing a buck.
Nope.
So, I guess, if you would agree or not agree, if you're focused on being good at what you're doing, the money will absolutely come because you're so damn good. You know, that's anything in life, I guess. But some people really chase hard after the money.
They do.
And it makes them look...
Feels dirty.
Yes.
Feels
needy.
Dirty and skeezy.
Yes.
But I feel like being authentic. Being authentic, realizing you might not always get a sale.
Right.
You might not. It might not be the best time for the person. It might be that something comes up during the process where you're like, you know, maybe they have a family situation where it's like, I could still sell them a home, you know?
I get it.
I could do it.
Right.
But do I want to? That's not right for that person, you know? So you got to feel that out, be authentic in your recommendations, be confident in them, mm-hmm. so that people, you've heard this, they want to know you, they do like you, and then they want to trust you. Know, like, and trust. It's
Do you think
huge.
The way you are today, and it's a softball question, but your military training has given you this, what component of your life, I'm not just going to say military, led you to where that's your thought process now? Was it the military? Was it your family?
I think it's a combination.
Was it your husband?
No, I think it's a combination of everything. Wanting to be a daughter that my dad's proud of, wanting to be not just the title of law enforcement or leader or director or whatever it was that I was in the military, but just wanting to live it and not just have the title, because unfortunately I've come across many people who have the title that suck at life, and you don't want to be that person.
Right.
And so modeling myself for my parents, my husband, my family, driving me to be someone that they would be proud of.
I think that's
they might not always like me at the moment, you know, because it might not even be something that they are super excited about. But in the end, again, we talked about it prevailing, doing the right thing and leading in a certain way. It always comes out for the better.
Gotcha. So change a little gears here. What was your first job in real estate? I
met this awesome lady named Janet.
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall how I met her. I think I just sought her out in the office, the RE/MAX office on Medford Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had made the decision. Well, I guess rewind. When I retired from the military, I went back to college, ironically, full-time, finished my degree. I got my bachelor's degree in project management. I had associate's degrees in law enforcement, criminal justice, and then I had an associate's degree from the military called Instructor of Technology and Military Science. So I was like, I'm going to go back and use my GI Bill and get my bachelor's degree in project management, because I felt that would be very relevant to real estate. So I did that. I retired. I did that full time, 1 year in Colorado, finished it up right before we were coming here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sought out Janet not long after we arrived here.
Well, how long ago was that?
How long ago was that?
When you and Janet got together?
It was about 8. It was almost right when we moved to New Jersey.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. Right after I finished my degree, we moved here. We got settled. John went to work. I got the kids settled back in high school. School started, and I think I connected with her shortly after that, because I'm not one that just likes to sit around
No, I can
and
tell.
not bring, something to the family, contributing in a form of, income. So I felt it was the right time. So I linked with Janet. I had actually purchased a home with RE/MAX with this other wonderful lady named Nancy when we came here. Nancy Schumacher. I don't know if you know her.
Oh, I know Nancy.
So, and we are still friends to this day.
Yep.
We just had lunch a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
She introduced me to Janet. So I linked with Janet, and the rest is history. I became an admin person at the front desk at RE/MAX as I was getting my license.
E1.
Starting all over again. Yeah.
Start all over again. So you start all over again in a new career.
Yeah.
8 years later, just give me a number of how many transactions have you closed in that time period when you jumped out of being the admin into a full-time realtor?
I believe I'm pushing somewhere between 275 and 300 now.
That's insane.
Total. Yeah, in 8 years. It's been crazy.
But you were at the front desk for what, a year, 2 years?
No, I think a few months.
Oh, really?
Maybe 4 months prior to starting my licensing.
Okay.
And a couple months into that. Yeah, not long. Maybe 6-8 months
So
total.
to get really started, you're now been in real estate for 7 years.
Yeah, 7-8 years. It's hard to...
And you're approaching 300 transactions in 7 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
I mean, you got your high years, your low years,
People who've been in business 20 years are not approaching 300 transactions.
Really?
No. And I see a lot of people. I've come across
Take
a
your
lot
word
of
for
different... It's a fact. You know that.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing what you've
It's sad to me
achieved.
that that's the case, but yeah.
Percentage of civilian versus military client for you?
At first, it was almost all military because that was my niche. That was what we knew.
Your bread route. I call it the bread route.
Yeah, we were connected to that community. We were actively meeting people. I always have stayed connected with the base, even though I'm not working on the base, because that's just something I'll always be passionate about. You don't do something for 21 years and not have passion for it.
It's just not in you.
John was still active duty at that time, so we were still well connected. So at first, almost all were military. And then slowly, they talk to people who talk to other people who talk to groups of people who recommend you, and the business grew. So I got my first civilian client, if you will, believe it or not, was a seller, was someone who wanted me to sell their house.
How about that?
Yeah, was not a civilian buyer looking to buy.
Right.
It was someone who wanted to sell their house. It was this older gentleman who trusted me right off. I met with he and his wife at Starbucks. I'm not going to say their name, but I love them. I have done, I think since I met him, he likes to move a lot. I think I've done 5 or 6 transactions with him over the 7 or 8 years.
That's beyond the average.
He does not like to stay still. He and his wife and I joke about that. But I think he's in his permanent spot now.
Are you licensed in any other states?
Nope.
Just New Jersey?
Just New Jersey. I don't know. I've always been a proponent of being an expert in your area.
Sure.
I know I could probably do that, but I don't know. Again, I'm not chasing the money or the sale. I also want to enjoy my life.
No, that's good news. It's family time too.
I don't like traffic, and
I don't like traffic. Yeah.
If it's not within an hour, hour and a half, South Jersey area, a little north. I like to know what I'm doing.
Gotcha.
I like to know the areas that I'm working in. I like to be the go-to.
So, what methods of marketing are you using for your funnels to grab new business? What are your go-tos? Come on, Jackie. You don't want to answer?
No, I'll answer.
Okay.
I don't feel like there's a magic answer to that.
Okay.
If I wanted to chase more money and more business and things like that, then I would dump more money into what you're talking about. But aside from a couple of postcard campaigns that I run in my own neighborhood and a couple others, I am really not putting a ton of money into marketing at all. It's a lot of referrals and word of mouth and conversations.
One of the things I think we should talk about is how to manage those properties for those military people when they do go on deployment and get them temporary tenants. You know, something that we should talk about, you know, how we can help with that and give a resource. I think that's interesting to me because that is a component I think that would curb people's concern when they're deployed. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, deployment...
To have somebody have a revenue coming in.
Yeah, I mean, deployment really isn't the thing because when you're a military member and you deploy, you still receive your basic allowance for housing for your base in which you're stationed. So
Gotcha.
They still have the income to pay for their home that they're coming back to when they come back from deployment. With military members, the hesitation for buying a home can sometimes revolve around whether they will be restationed somewhere, permanent change of station
Gotcha.
within a short time frame or a set time frame. I learned that in the last couple of years myself. I'm always learning.
Oh, that's the thing about this industry. You don't know everything. I don't care how long you've been in there.
No, and then it's going to change on you the minute you do know it.
And look at what just recently just happened. Buyer agency agreements.
The connection from law enforcement, military, adaptability. You're on 24/7. All the time. You're on. Real estate. You're on 24/7. You're adapting. You're learning. You know, military, law enforcement. I'm not going home until that report's written. If I pull someone over, I'm not writing the rest of the ticket or turning it in later. I'm doing it right then and there.
Right.
You know, there's a timeline for everything. Real estate, same thing. If someone wants to make an offer, I'm not submitting it tomorrow.
Right.
It might not be there tomorrow. It's getting sent in today. You want to be my client? Great. We're doing a buyer agency agreement today. You do things in a timely manner. They're very commensurate with those two things, I would
absolutely.
say. With being able to be on and being able to have good follow-up.
Boom. The follow-up is everything.
It's the key.
Totally.
And a lot of people in this industry
are
not like that. And believe it or not, a lot of people in the military aren't like that. So, you know, I think someone asked me, did being in the military and being a cop and being a senior leader, did that set you up for success in real estate? In a way. I think me gaining my experience over here set me up for a success in real estate while being me in both. There are people who are very successful in the military that shouldn't have been, that would be crappy at real estate.
How about that?
So I don't think one just necessarily makes you good at the other. I think it's personality. You either have it, you can connect with people, and they trust you or they don't.
That's awesome.
Interesting.
Well, thank you so much.